Jesus' temptation in the desert has so much relationship and similarities to the Israelites' journey in the Exodus, their temptations in the desert. If you think back just through Scripture, the Israelites are in the desert for 40 years, very significant number. Jesus spends 40 days and nights in the desert, in fasting and in prayer. The Israelites go through the desert. They're hungry, they're starving, they're complaining. And if you know the story of God raining down manna in the desert, He hears their complaints, and He sees that they're hungry, and He feeds them with manna, which is this miraculous bread. Jesus is in the desert, and he's tempted to do what? Turn stones into bread. The Israelites go through the desert. What is very obvious, one of the things they often do, is they break the first commandment on their journey to the Promised Land. The most famous example being at Mount Orb, where they build this golden calf. They commit the sin of idolatry. So Jesus goes through the same thing. The devil tempts him. Bow down, worship me. You can have all of this. I'm the king of the world. I'm going to give it all to you. But Jesus doesn't succumb. The Israelites go through the desert. They are constantly testing God for 40 years. Do this for us. Do this for us. We will worship you if you do this for us. Moses striking the rock for water. They're constantly putting God to the test. And the devil tempts Jesus. Throw yourself down from this temple. God will support you. The angels will support you. What does he respond? Shall not put the Lord your God to the test. So everything the Israelites failed at, Jesus restores as the new king of Israel. Jesus is constantly, he's the new Adam. We hear this at first reading, the fall of Adam. He is the new Adam. Everything the devil uses to destroy, Jesus not only remakes, he glorifies and makes better than the original state. And he takes all of this, he takes all of the fallen creation, he takes our sinfulness, which is Israel, he brings it all to himself, and he brings it all the way to the cross and restores it. And ushers in a new creation. So if you think about it, if these are the temptations of the Israel and Jesus who fell into, the Israelites who fell into them, but Jesus who did not, what's the same thing that happens to us? You can bet the same temptations will be given. You know, one of my favorite saints, the patron saint of parish priests, St. John Vianney, had a great saying. It's somebody that battled the devil, who was assaulted by the devil, and had to deal with the devil on a constant basis. He had a great saying. Satan is the silliest of creatures because he never does anything new. Say it again. Satan is the silliest of creatures because he never does anything new. So he gives the same temptations he gave to Israel, he gave to Jesus, he will give to us. He's a broken record over and over and over again. Nothing new, no originality. The silliest of creatures. So if you just relate this to how we live our lives. So number one, Jesus is tempted to turn stones into bread. What is that about? What is that about for us? If we just think about that in our lives. He's out there starving, he's hungry. He's tempted to become comfortable again. In our lives, most of our sinfulness is nothing but seeking comfort and pleasure. We do things, we constantly fall into things because why? We want to be comfortable. What do we consume when we are uncomfortable? That's the question I want us to ask. You know, the sins we fall into: gluttony, the search for power, the search for wealth, lust, even anger can make us comfortable. All of these things, jealousy, talking about others, tearing others down so we can be comfortable. That's the tricks of the devil. It's the same type things that he's done, that he tempts us with. Second thing that the Israelites fall into is idolatry. You know, we are called to worship God alone. So nothing is to get in the way of our relationship with God. We are called to have this total adherence to God. But the reality is we don't. You don't, I don't. We put something else in the place of God. So just for example, many of us are workaholics in American society. We substitute work for God. We substitute sports for God. Like I said, I was a former athlete. I wish I had put the time in my spiritual life that I did back when, that I did in batting cages and going to baseball tournaments and playing football and working out. You know, I just came from the Catholic school system in Mobile, where many of the parishes have Catholic schools. I had to run out there one day. They were out there, 3-year-olds are out there practicing soccer. I said, "Are you out of your mind? It's Sunday. Shut it down. Go spend some time with your family." Idolatry. The second thing that we're tempted with is, we have to think about it, is what consumes us. The first is, when we're talking about comfort, is what am I consuming? The second thing, idolatry, is what's consuming me. As a priest, you know, I work on Sundays. It's a busy day for me. This is where I encounter all of my people. And I have this temptation, I've fallen into it a lot, that, you know, not to pull back. So, you know, to go after Mass is done and baptisms are done in the afternoon, to go over there and catch up on emails and to return phone calls and to plan for the week and to take meetings and appointments. When in reality, God tells us that's the day we should be resting. We all know we're overworked. What do? We work on Sunday anyway. God tells us not to do it. We work on Sundays. We do things we shouldn't be doing. You know, I had a bad habit of doing laundry on Sunday and running the dishes. Poor time management the other 6 days. God tells us to work 6 days and rest. We don't put in good days' work. We don't plan well. So for those 6 days, we sit around at night, like sometimes to binge watch Netflix. We binge watch TV. We don't put in a good day's work. And so what are we doing? We're playing catch up on Sunday now. And it should be the other way around. I fall into it. I'm sure you fall into it. It's just an act of not putting in a good days, being lazy at times. We should be planning our entire week on Sunday. We should be totally free on Sunday to do nothing but other than go to Mass and spend time with your family. That's all that's required. Catch up on rest. You know, one of my commitments during Lent is I've taken on a couple things, is to get reordered. So one of the things that's as hard as it's going to be for me is not to respond to emails on Sunday. Nothing's that important unless it's a life or death situation. I'm not going to take on any appointments unless it's an emergency, and I'm going to stay clear out of the office. That sounds good. It sounds like, hey, that sounds like all fun and games until the reality sits in. And so 2 questions I just want to pose to all of us. What do we consume too much of? What are we turning stones into to fulfill our desires? Second question is, what is consuming you? What have you made an idol in your life? Because it's got to go away. It's getting in the way with your relationship with God, and it's getting in your way with the relationship with others. What's consuming you? What is controlling you? What is possessing you? What are you making an idol? It's different for many people. Some people, like I said, it's work they're consumed by. Some people are consumed by addictions to different things, alcohol, pornography, whatever. Some people are consumed by power and success and status in the world. It's getting in the way. Just trust me on this. What are you putting in the place of God? What are we putting in the place of God at times? Because in the Holy Eucharist, that's where we should be consuming. We consume the very life of God. Sunday is the priority, consuming the life of God. Stones that are not turned into bread, but here on the altar, bread is turned into the flesh and blood, soul and divinity of Jesus Christ, the very life of God. If we're going to consume anything or be consumed, let us consume the very life of God and pray for the grace that the life of God is allowed to consume us.